The unnoticed decline of barley.
In this segment, we will explore the evolving role of wheat, barley, and maize in South Korea's diet and agricultural economy. We will explore how these grains transitioned from traditional substitutes to essential components of modern Korean food culture. We will also examine the impact of trade liberalization on their production and the challenges of domestic cultivation. Barley, once Korea's second staple, played a crucial role in the country's food security during times of hardship. Historically, it was commonly mixed with rice to stretch supplies, particularly during such hard times as the Pacific War and the Korean War. However, barley consumption began to decline in the 1970s as rice production increased due to the Green Revolution. When Tongil rice was first introduced, some farmers expressed their concern that the late harvest season of Tongil rice might be an obstacle to double cropping of barley and rice. However, as long as Tongil rice could ensure higher yields and compensate for the reduction in barley production, farmers did not hold on to the practice of double cropping. Urban consumers also moved away from barley as rice became readily available in the market. As a result, the Green Revolution of South Korea unintentionally marginalized barley and accelerated the monoculture of rice by solidifying its dominance. Essentially, barley never shed its status as an inferior substitute for rice and was easily relinquished by both producers and consumers. The geographical reach and significance of barley cultivation did not recover, even after environmental issues led farmers to abandon Tongil brand rice in the early 1980s. In late 1977, while the entire nation was celebrating the accomplishment of the Green Revolution, the Rural Development Administration ambitiously stated that their subsequent goal following self-sufficiency in rice was to achieve self-sufficiency in barley and wheat, announcing the establishment of the Institute of Barley and Wheat under the RDA. However, it became clear that this goal was unattainable as both the demand and supply of barley plummeted since the late 1970s. Barley's status shifted from being the second most important staple crop to merely an ingredient in nostalgic and even exotic snacks today.
The rise of wheat in Korean diet.
On the other hand, wheat, initially seen as another inferior substitute for rice, gained acceptance through government campaigns and the proliferation of Western food culture. In the 1950s and the 1960s, U.S. food aid under the Public Law 480 program introduced wheat flour into Korean households, leading to the emergence of wheat-based foods such as instant ramen, bread, and Chinese-style noodles. The rising popularity of these products cemented wheat as a permanent part of the Korean diet. The influence of imported wheat on Korean diets has grown steadily over the decades. Wheat-based foods, including noodles, bread, and pastries, have become everyday staples, with their popularity further reinforced by the expansion of global fast food chains in South Korea. The rise of convenience foods has also fueled wheat consumption. Instant noodles, in particular, have become a defining element of Korean food culture, with the country ranking among the highest per capita consumers of instant ramen globally. The affordability and convenience of these products have made them a dietary staple, particularly among students and low-income households. According to recent statistics, the annual consumption of wheat per capita in South Korea reached 35 kilograms, more than half that of rice. Compared with the peak in 1982, the consumption of rice dropped by half within a generation, and a substantial portion of that decrease was replaced by increased wheat consumption. Now, it might no longer be an exaggeration to call wheat the second staple crop of South Korea. Despite increasing demand for wheat-based products, however, domestic wheat production remains minimal, with over 98% of the wheat consumed in South Korea being imported, primarily from United States, Australia, and Canada. South Korea's reliance on foreign wheat has raised concerns about food security, as supply chain disruptions and global wheat price fluctuations can directly impact Korean consumers.
The hidden dominance of maize.
Beyond rice, barley, and wheat, another foreign component quietly figures into the modern South Korean diet: maize. While maize may not appear as a staple for South Koreans in the way it does for many Mexicans, national statistics reveal that maize consumption surpasses wheat by more than double, positioning maize, in fact, as South Korea's most consumed cereal in overall national consumption. Despite its significant role, maize stays largely invisible to individual consumers because it is predominantly used as livestock feed. Understanding the rising importance of this hidden cereal requires examining the increased meat and dairy consumption in South Korea, where the per capita annual intake of meat products has more than quadrupled from 14 kilograms in 1980 to over 60 kilograms in 2023. Maize is the most heavily imported grain in South Korea, supporting the country's growing meat and dairy industries. South Korea imports millions of tons of maize annually, primarily from the United States, Argentina, and Brazil. The demand for maize has been driven by the rising consumption of meat, particularly pork and chicken, which are central to popular Korean dishes such as samgyeopsal or grilled pork belly and fried chicken. In addition to its use in animal feed, maize plays a role in the processed food industry, being a key ingredient in corn syrup, cooking oil, and various snack foods. Its prevalence in the food supply chain makes it an essential, albeit often overlooked, component of South Korea's agricultural economy. Presently, in the global food marketplace, South Korea stands as the second largest maize importer, trailing only Japan. Domestic maize production is limited, covering a mere 1% of demand, suggesting that the country's overall cereal self-sufficiency will likely remain low for the foreseeable future.
The future of non-rice grains in South Korea.
As dietary habits continue to evolve, the role of wheat and maize in Korean food culture will likely expand further. The demand for wheat-based foods, including bakery products and processed snacks, continues to rise, while maize remains crucial for the livestock industry. Despite increasing wheat consumption, however, domestic wheat production remains negligible, covering only a fraction of national demand. Similarly, domestic maize cultivation is virtually non-existent, with nearly all supply sourced through imports. The reliance on imported grains raised concerns about food security, particularly in times of geopolitical tension or global trade disruptions. Events such as the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine have demonstrated the vulnerabilities of global food supply chains, prompting discussions on the need for South Korea to diversify its grain sources or invest in domestic production capabilities. Government initiatives aimed at increasing domestic grain production have had limited success. Efforts to encourage wheat farming through subsidies and research into climate-resilient wheat varieties continue, but structural challenges such as high land cost and competition with more profitable crops remain obstacles. The challenge for South Korea moving forward will be striking a balance between maintaining food security and managing economic dependencies on grain imports.